Very happy to have you here amidst what has been a very challenging year. And I wanted to ask on that front, what have the last few months been like for you as performers, not being able to live your normal lives and do your normal jobs? What's that been like?
Yeah, I hadn't worked for a year, and we're both now in London. I started shooting a couple of weeks ago. I'm doing something which is amazing considering we're still in a lockdown here.
Oh, good.
But it's really relieving to be back on a set and sort of in that collaboration. It was really surreal. I had grand plans of writing a novel or learning a language, and then it was just
I think we all did. We all had those plans. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun at first. It was like a snow day, a perpetual snow day, and then it just became very tedious. And I realized how much I get from the nourishment of creating with other people,
Right. Is there something you didn't realize you missed on set until you got back and you thought, oh, Crafty and the crew members and the transpo guys and
Crafty doesn't exist now because it's all not COVID safe. Like everything's
that's right.
It's real. You can see like that much of people.
Right.
But just, to go and say words that aren't your own was a relief, if nothing else.
Oh, that sounds so nice. Very nice. And how about you, Diego? Are you back to work at all, or are you still in limbo?
No, yeah, I'm about to start shooting, and I spent the whole confinement in Mexico City, and it was quite intense. This whole pandemic just confronts you with everything around you. It's like you start seeing what you were choosing not to see, or not seeing it because you were just not aware, and suddenly this was shocking because. Now, as an actor and just as a filmmaker, there's no way I cannot compare what I'm portraying or thinking of portraying or analyzing with what I'm going through. It's like it has changed the way I see everything I do, and obviously what I do as an actor. I was part of a show. We did a show in Mexico, and it was one of the first things that was shooting in Mexico. And what it meant for all the team, it was so special. Suddenly this pandemic just took away that thing we were capable of doing, and suddenly being back and understanding that there's a need for what we do, that there's a need for stories to be out, and there's a need today to reflect on who we are, because this confrontation has been intense. It's kind of nice to feel that there's a reason for our craft to exist,
For sure. I think we speak for everyone when we say having something to watch that brings us comfort and being able to escape has never meant more than it has since March, at least for me.
Or confront, not always escape,
Right.
or confront,
no, that's true.
because there's also so much, like I think this pandemic was like a lens that got on top of us, and and it's letting us see who we are, and everything, the good and the bad. And I think what we do can contribute a lot into direction that energy into the reflection that is needed today to get out of this stronger and different, hopefully.
Well, having spoken to you for a few minutes, both of you, now I know why you were cast in this movie, because you seem like very soulful, introspective people. So that makes perfect sense to me now. But before we talk about Wander Darkly, I did want to talk a little bit about your acting backgrounds. This is an audience of actors. And I would love to know, what were your earliest acting influences in terms of something you saw or a person who inspired you? I know, Diego, you grew up, your parents were both artists, your dad worked in theater. Was that directly impacting on you as wanting to perform?
Yeah, definitely. I think theater was where I felt the safest. It was this space where I could call that people my family, and to me that was it was the natural place to be in, and the natural place also to communicate. And then, I grew up. I grew up in a time where Mexico wasn't producing that much cinema. So for me, cinema was always a foreign language, and for me, cinema was always people that look different, but somehow connected with me. And it was interesting. It was a way to explore what was out there, what was far away, what seemed not to belong to me, and suddenly it did. And I started acting in cinema way after I started doing theater. I've done it since I'm really young.
And is it true you were in telenovelas as a kid?
Yeah. I was.
What was the name of the show you were on?
I'm not gonna remind people something that needs to be forgotten.
No.
Sadly,
you can learn a lot of good skills.
Of course, there's a lot of what not to do, you know. But I mean, it was a time, I say, the end of '80s and beginning of the '90s, where every actor was doing TV to pay the bills, you know, and there was no many options, and that's why theater was such a the perfect spot to end up your day, you know. If you had the chance to get on the stage, there was nothing better and therapeutic to clean up your soul.
Right. Well, I love that. And I've actually spoken to a lot of people who started working in soap operas, and they talk a lot about how it's a great place to learn lines because you have so much dialogue. So I think I'm a fan of soaps, I have to say. So good for you.
I tried not to learn them, not to use much space of my brain on those lines, because also they write them like in half an hour. So why are you going to take two to learn them?
It's a good point. It's a very good point.
Not all of them, to be honest, not all of them. I did many really bad ones, but there's great efforts also.
I agree. And Sienna, I know you had sort of a duality in your life as sort of American influences and British influences. Who or what did you see as a young person that really inspired you and made you want to be an artist?
You know, when my mother ran the Lee Strasberg Theatre Institute in London when I was about 4, she'd gone there, I think more as a sort of therapy. She doesn't really explain why she went, because she didn't have ambitions to be an actor, but she went to that school and there was something magical about that school. So she set up the one in London. And I'd go and visit her, and it's pretty out there. That it's kind of Stanislavski based, but it's very method. It's very intense. And I'd watch these grown-ups kind of having these transcendental experiences, or working on sense memory, which would be 4 hours of trying to smell a lemon, or like 4 hours. It was just so weird. And as a kid, like seeing grown-ups playing for hours, I was like, this is incredible. And then my mum loved the theatre, so we'd always go. And I remember being so bored in moments and then just so elated in others, but never forgetting that magic of when the lights go down and there's that noise and everyone goes quiet. And to this day, every play I've ever done, that moment where you're standing backstage and you know you're about to go on and there's this, and for no, often before the lights have even gone down, there's a collective hush. It just happens. There's something in that moment that I just endlessly crave. And then, you know, Some Like It Hot. That was probably my favorite movie when I was about 6. It was so funny, and she was so captivating, and it was so glamorous and exotic. And again, I think for me, it was whatever. Everybody has childhoods that are complicated, but there was something about being transported or escaping into some alternate reality and playfulness that to never lose that was really the draw.
Well, I love that. And I'm glad to see neither of you has lost that, even in this very difficult year. So thank you for that. And in getting to Wander Darkly, this movie is so affecting in so many ways, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I do want to know what your first thoughts and feelings were when you read the script. I have a feeling you had a visceral reaction, much like I had watching it. What was the first thing you thought about the potential of playing these characters? Let's start with Sienna.
You know, I think that first of all, when I read it, I was really weeping at the end. And whenever that happens, and it's rare, I'm like, there's something in this that I'm responding to on some level that is telling me something. And that probably means it's something I should think about doing. I hadn't been offered it. I'd been snuck the script because Diego and I had an agent. And
I saw that. Yes. I wondered if that was a connection. Yeah.
Yeah. We've been trying to find something to do together. And she was like, oh, read this. They might be going to someone else. And I read it and I was like, at the end. And I was like, please, can I do this film? I think it was something to do with the idea of this couple that are clearly imploding, but going back together and examining the bits or the beats where they went wrong, those kind of U-turns that you make, or those small moments that build to something significant where two people that once loved each other are falling apart. Right. The idea of kind of going back and analyzing that, I just found fascinating and moving, and as heavy as it was, I felt like it would be really challenging, which I love. it felt sort of life affirming at the end, and like a celebration of resilience and an exploration of love and grief, and it felt very human, you know, which is what I think I'm really drawn to, like and also the people that you wouldn't always look at. They're not the people that are sort of on the fringe or just not particularly noticeable people, but everybody has their story. I think I'm always drawn to that. They felt like normal, interesting, but everyday people.
Yeah, they felt like people we knew, and they lived in a place that felt familiar, and they weren't stockbrokers in New York, or, you know, they felt like, oh, I know her.
Just your neighbor, and then you know, life. But everybody has their story, you know, which is what I love.
And how about you, Diego? What scared you and excited you about this part?
Everything, and because it was, I had the same reaction, and I did cry, and I did like felt deeply moved by the risk also that the script was taking. You know, every time I receive a script that reflects on love in a complicated, complex way, you know, challenging the audience, to me is something that cinema deserves, you know, and to raise the bar and say like, love is the theme, of course, but what are you bringing? You know, what are you bringing new here? And the reflection on memory was interesting to me. It felt like it was an amazing challenge, an acting challenge for these two roles. You know, to live in all those layers. You know, to make sure you could bring truth to something that sounded very theatrical in many ways. You know, there's all these moments where we break from reflecting on something and then experiencing it at the same time. It sounded complex and fun, and I was doing, you know, a TV show, and I said, this is going to be amazing, and I'm going to work with Sienna, and I'm going to be for 6 weeks out of that character that I've been doing for a year, and not having to use guns nor say nasty things. It's going to be beautiful and fun. And then it was so complicated and so intense, and difficult, because it is very risky, it is challenging, and it was complex to achieve this in so little time, you know. So it was very, very intense, a very intense process. Gladly it was with Sienna, otherwise it would have been a disaster, I think. I mean, internally, like the process, you know, because this is you have to trust who's next to you, because also you don't have there was you don't feel there's a safety net, because I've never been asked to do something like this in my life, you know, as an actor. I mean, probably in theater, but it's very different, because then the audience is there, and you do it every night, and it's a different experience.
Right. And in terms of, so the people watching this will have seen the film, so I'm not spoiling anything by saying that we see this couple go through this terrible accident. Even though that's sort of like the calling card of the film, it's actually, for me, it's secondary to then just this exploration of the relationship. What did you learn about yourself in that exploration, either as a performer or just as a person, in terms of the way you approach your own relationships in life? Have you learned something that you've taken with you outside of the film?
I think if anything, it's noticing those beats that are corrosive, you know, the kind of the little things that you let slide, or that you don't communicate, or, you know, I think this couple had the potential to really be happy and be together and to make it. And they didn't. And it was a series of miscommunications and little resentments that just accumulate. And how do you avoid those potholes that I think we're all susceptible to? Just, I think it comes down to communication, and the idea of being able to go back and really communicate through those moments, and also notice how your recollection of something can be so vastly different to your partner's recollection of something, you know.
Right.
Everybody has their kind of story and their version. I think it's about noticing, you know, awareness and
acknowledging those, in not preventing them, but acknowledging them.
And acknowledging the reality that everybody sees things a little bit differently to how you might, you know, respecting that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and also there's something very beautiful, and both of you are parents in real life too, but the fact that they had all these problems, but they also had this beautiful child that unified them, that I thought was like the most beautiful part of the story. Is you can have these issues, but look at this thing we made together. And my God, that baby is so cute, by the way.
Oh my God.
The most beautiful baby I've ever seen. Oh my gosh. So cute.
Yeah.
And Diego, have you felt that different after making this movie? I know you've said that the pandemic has encouraged you to look at the world differently. Do you think about yourself differently and how you relate to people?
Your experience matters as much as the experience of others matter to you, you know? Like you can actually say you're experiencing something real if you care about what others are feeling, what others are going through. Otherwise, it's something you can touch. Is something that is not real. It's not there. So, in order to have an experience with someone, you have to care about each other. You know, you have to really want to see. And I think this is what this film at least reminded me from beginning to end. How much of this that I think I am is truly who I am. You know, and therefore I have to go and ask outside and see out there. And I think that's a beautiful thing to remind ourselves. But I completely agree also with everything else Sienna said. And it was interesting to do this together, you know, now after not just like having kids, but our age and, you know, like, I mean, once you have something to reflect on, you know, once you have experiences you can relate and you can break into pieces and analyze, and that's when this job becomes amazing, with when you have tools and material to bring to set, you know. And I think we both had that.
Yeah, that's great. It's the benefit of getting older, right? I'd actually love to know how much time you had to rehearse together before you started shooting, because you said it was a quick shoot. Did you have much rehearsal time with each other?
I think we had about 5 days in a room with Tara, really going through the script. It was such a surreal thing to act, because I know I can speak for Diego and myself with this, but you know, the goal is always to be as natural as possible and to, you know, as kind of much normal life as you can reflect. I always find that better. But this idea of being in a scene in a moment in time and then having to stop and shift and be like, no, that didn't happen. You know, it's so surreal to perform that, and so difficult to make that feel natural, that I think for a lot of this, we were kind of cringing through it. Like, how is this going to work? And trusting Tara, then she's like in the edit, you know, and having to both look simultaneously at it in a moment like that way, so that the camera could pan to a different world or a different, you know, moment in time. But it was, the technical stuff was difficult to not want to fight against. We had to really surrender to it as a character in the film almost, which was the antithesis of what you aim for, you know.
Right.
Commenting on yourself in a scene is just like breaking the fourth wall. I would find that impossible to kind of talk to a camera. It would be difficult, but it felt like that in moments.
Well, and I wondered that just on the continuity front of just keeping track of all the different layers of reality that the characters are going through, and wondering, okay, in this scene, she is experiencing real life, and this scene's a fantasy, and this scene is a projection. I would imagine that was very hard to keep track of.
And a lot of the rehearsal was like, okay, so is this in the past or the present? Like, it was literally breaking the script down, okay, like past, present. Like, I had different highlighters for different, but it would hop from line to line. So it was a lot to break down and kind of work through.
I'm sure
it was more analysis than anything, you know. Like, rehearsing was just used to understand or to pretend to, you know, that you understood, because sometimes we went, but I think that's when, and I think that's why the relation works as it does, because on a way we just had each other, you know. It's like we had to look at each other and say, like, the world is going crazy, they want us to do this. Is it good or bad, you know? And obviously you were always in front of each other, so you were like, I totally bought that. I mean, I don't know how this is gonna cut with the next thing, but what you just said made sense to me, and it was the only way to keep going, because again, I think there's just a few jobs in my life where I felt I was part of just a tiny process of it, crucial but tiny, you know, because then you get all that material into an editing room and you can do whatever you want. Like, there's
Right.
so many ways to, you know, to get there. And obviously Tara had everything in her mind. But when you are executing, it's you need a partner, and a partner to say, yeah, okay, it's fine. Otherwise, sleeping was impossible. You know, going to bed at night feeling shit, I just ruined the whole film, and they haven't noticed.
Well, I was going to ask about and that brings up a good point, is sort of like the emotional toll of working with this material. Were you able to set it aside at night and give yourself some rest and be with your families? And I mean, I would imagine this is very all-consuming, something like this.
I found
Sienna,
it
I'll
really,
have you.
really intense to do. I found it was just that state of total disorientation and confusion. And I think part of that was this kind of time warping and self-commentary, but also the just the confusion that my character is feeling, and just no ground underneath her. I felt that was difficult to get rid of, but then as a parent, you just have to drop it when you get
Right. You don't really have a choice.
That's
at
you
that
really
point.
start acting, is when you're like, hi sweetie, everything's good, you know, but inside you're like, ah. The
Right,
anxiety. But
right.
like Diego said, it was such a relief to have each other. But there were moments of, you know, that grief is just, it's real. The pain that you feel for the part you're playing, imagining what that must have been like to think that things are a certain way, and then to discover that actually no, it wasn't, you've got it all wrong. And just I think the, you know, the empath kicks in, and you're sort of weeping for everybody who's experienced that kind of loss, and it's heavy and also cathartic. I mean, it's the weirdest job in the world. You sort of bash out your own fear and pain and everybody else's pain. There's always relief, and you know, you finish those scenes and you feel something that's kind of lighter, but it's also, I don't know, it's messy acting. You know what it's like. It's like, what is it except that I guess when it comes together, it's rewarding ultimately.
Well, and I think a movie like this has particular resonance this year, as so many people are coping with loss and grief. And I've been lucky enough to not experience a loss like this year, but it still feels comforting to see someone working through that on screen, and to see how that person tries to heal herself. And that's what I think especially this year, this film is very valuable.
Yeah,
on that front.
Something that everybody has to experience. You know, it's something that we don't really spend much time, you know, everybody prepares so much for birth, but looking at death, you know, that is the inevitable for all of us, but to spend time in that collective human experience, which is something that everybody will have to deal with, maybe in less tragic circumstances, but you know, I think those are the things that kind of unite us as a species, and that's what art can do. And I think going through the collective experience globally of this pandemic, and like you said, grief and loss and confusion and turmoil, and it does feel like the right moment for this film.
Either the best or worst moment ever for a movie like this. And Diego, I was curious, what would you say was your toughest day shooting? A scene that was really hard between the two of you, or a scene that just tested you physically, where you just thought, ooh, this is going to be a hard one today?
You just described every day. So that there was not actually simple days, you know. But I guess those moments that are very technical, but you can't stay on the technical side of it, where you had to go from one to the other nonstop, you know, from living in the moment to describing the moment to her, which was also living a moment, you know, because it wasn't like, okay, I become a narrator and I go like, well, what I was did it. No, I'm still living that moment, trying to convince her that something happened. So there's one level here, and both have to work, and they have to make sense. They can't conflict with each other. They're supposed to be seen. If you're seeing just one part of reality, you have to believe everything that's happening, but then you have to understand something else is happening. And it was complicated. It was complicated not to stay in a very technical approach and try to give some truth to that. But that happened often on that set, often, and the speed. I mean, the amount of work we had every day, and the fast we were moving forward, there was no time to actually digest what just happened, and I would say more than one day, it was the first weeks and the last ones. The first weeks it was like, holy shit, this is moving too fast. My God, I came to do movies, it was supposed to have time. This was supposed to be different, and this goes too fast. And then at the end, because we were exhausted, but that's the beauty also of this job, that there's no way you can actually predict what's going to happen there, and if you're open, then sometimes great things can happen.
Well, and you were so lucky to have each other, because it seems you really trusted the other person, not only to help you in those tough moments, but to give you feedback. Because you respect the other person, you actually listen and maybe help each other and not feel so isolated during those tough times.
Yeah, we really needed each other in this one. Thank God. Thank God.
And finally, as people, we all work to move on and have high hopes for the next year, what do you hope people take away from this film that they can apply to their lives, no matter what they've experienced? Are there smaller lessons? Are there bigger lessons? Is it really just a sense of community? What do you hope people learn?
I think in seeing it with an audience in Sundance, and kind of, it's always hard to project that far ahead for me. But I know from the reactions of people who saw it that people who'd experienced grief felt really soothed by seeing that. People the movie finished and they wanted to call the person that they loved and tell them that they loved them. It's sort of cherishing that life is fleeting and anything can happen, and to cherish the small moments, and to take the beats or the moments in life, and to appreciate where you are. I think that was a big driving force in why Tara made this film. Was she was in this car accident and she suddenly realized how transient the experience on Earth can be. So it's just slowing down to pause and be grateful. Probably it's life affirming. I think at the end, whatever tragedy exists in it, you do end up with a feeling of hope, and it's romantic, And
I like that. How about you, Diego? I'm sure you share a lot of those thoughts, but
yeah, definitely. That and that you can see a romantic film. We can discuss love. We can reflect on love without losing the opportunity to actually go really deep. To actually dig in. That what we see, and I don't know. Like, my time matters much more than now than ever. The time I spend in front of a screen. I want to laugh, but I want to feel something that deeply changes me or asks me to reflect on something that matters. I want to be challenged, and I want to celebrate cinema that challenges audiences and force you to go a little further than what you normally would expect in terms of reflecting, and I think this film aims for that, and I think that's why I'm here, and why people should watch it, because it's lovely when love is complicated, as it is in life. I hate to see films where I feel like an idiot. I go like, but it's not like that. I'm suffering a lot. Why is that guy smiling? So it's kind of nice to realize, yes, it is complicated.
Yes, for everyone. There is a comfort in that. Well, I wanted to thank you so much, both of you, for being here today, and congratulations on the film. I can't wait for people to see it and take away all these incredible lessons that you've shared with us, which is very meaningful right now.
Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Lovely
much.
to talk to you.
You too.